Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. My name's Martha Walsh, and I'm the Associate Sales Director at LMP Education. And I'm really genuinely pleased to be hosting this session as part of our National Apprenticeship Week webinar series. It's one of my favourite weeks in the calendar. It gives us a really nice opportunity to celebrate the amazing impact of apprenticeships and that they have in the sector, but also for us to stop and take a minute to think about strategically our workforce development instead of just firefighting, which often happens. So I'm especially pleased to be joined by the lovely Lee Pender from Nexus Education School Trust and Elliot Han from Manchester Community Primary Academy. So both of the panelists today are actively embedding apprenticeships into their workforce planning. They're not just talking about it, they're really doing it. So I'm excited about the conversation that we'll have a little bit later on. And just to kind of frame it today, it's not about theories, it's about how apprenticeships can actually support you and to support a sustainable workforce across your schools and trusts. So to get going, I'll just walk you through what we'll cover. I'll start with a quick overview of LMP so you can understand who we are and why we care so much about this space. I'll zoom out then to look at the changing landscape across education, because I think apprenticeships only really make sense when viewed in context. Then we'll walk through the benefits of apprenticeships, particularly from a workforce strategy perspective. And I'll move into the panel discussion with Lee and Elliot and talk about the reality on the ground of implementing apprenticeships in maths, what works, what doesn't work, and what then barriers are. After that, I'll cover the upcoming changes that are happening in April to the levy, because they're really significant this year. So it's great that we can kind of get ahead and start planning for those. And then we'll close with how we can create a more intentional strategy and how we can help you do that. So I'll keep this bit short and sweet. So LMP is LMP Education is an award-winning apprenticeship training provider operating nationwide. We've been delivering funded training for over 22 years now. Last summer, we were rated good by Ofsted following our inspection, and previously we'd been rated #1 UK training provider by Rate My Apprenticeship, which is really nice because it was voted for by the learners. We also are Platinum Investors in People and Safeguarding Gold 2, which we're incredibly proud of. We work across education, early years, business and professional services. And we're part of Supporting Education Group, which makes us the 4th largest independent training provider in England. But more importantly, we specialise in education. So we understand the environment that you are all operating in. I think it's really important to frame where the sector is right now. So schools and maths are operating in an extremely complex environment. We've got rising SEND and SEMH needs, more diverse classrooms, technology transformation, ongoing budget pressures, and a shifting workforce expectations. So this means workforce planning can't be reactive anymore. It's no longer just about replacing levers. It's about asking the questions, do we have the right skills mix? Are we building leadership capacity? Are we developing specialists internally? Are we using budgets as effectively as possible? And trust leaders are having to think much more strategically, and apprenticeships, I think, are right in the middle of that conversation. With this slide, so I'd seen this slide at a round table a few weeks ago, and the data came from one of our partners impacted, and it just really highlights the scale of change. Since 2018, the proportion of pupils with an EHCP has doubled. IFS estimates that around half the increased school spend since 2019 is related to SEND, and the government forecast shows that spend expenditure will go up by 2 billion by 2028, and we're obviously still waiting on the outcomes of the SEND white paper, but it kind of really draws a question on how do we build capability for SEND at scale? How do we strengthen expertise without recruiting externally? And I think that's where structured development, including apprenticeships, become incredibly powerful. So I wanted just to pause here and for you to think about your trust for a moment. Where are your biggest pressures? Is it SEND, behaviour, leadership succession, operational efficiency? and how much of your current CPD strategy is proactive versus reactive. I know apprenticeships aren't the only answer to all your CPD worries, but often they're sitting there really underutilised as a funded development mechanism. So just wanted to kind of do a bit of myth busting before we kind of get into the teeth of the conversation. And one of the biggest misconceptions is that apprenticeships are just for school leavers, and we know they're not. They're for anyone over 16 who's employed, can demonstrate new learning. If you have a degree, it just needs to be materially different from the new subject area you're going to be learning about. And I think they're really suitable for new recruits, existing staff stepping into new responsibilities, and that long-standing staff who are developing into specialist or leadership roles. So it isn't just for the early careers, it's for that structured career development. When thinking about apprenticeship benefits and the benefits that they can bring to your organisation, I find it really helpful to group them into two areas. So first, we have that upskilling of the existing workforce, and apprenticeships allow you to build expertise and capability internally, develop that SEND expertise, create leadership pathways, strengthen operational teams. And when your staff can clearly see progression routes, retention improves. We've seen that morale improves, confidence improves, and ultimately pupil outcomes improve. Secondly, we look at talent pipelines and recruitment savings. Using apprenticeships, it can allow you to bring in new talent with the right attitude and then grow them in line with your trust needs. So they might not have the skills up front, but you can kind of bring them in and utilise them that way. It allows you to widen your recruitment pool and just reduce the reliance on the expensive recruitment costs that can often come with placing new starters. So really, when we're talking about apprenticeships here, we're not just talking about the funding, but that sustainable workforce planning piece, which is super important. So I'm going to hand over, well, I'm not going to hand over, I'm going to play a short little video, which is actually from Manchester Communications Academy. So Elliot's part of this video, and you can see how they're directly embedding apprenticeships into their workforce planning. This is a first play, so it's hot off the press.
At Manchester Communication Primary Academy, apprenticeships have become one of the most powerful ways we grow our workforce and strengthen our community. We truly believe in the power of apprenticeships. Apprenticeships allow us to bring people into education who may not have followed a traditional route, but who have the values, commitment and potential to make a real difference to children's lives. What's been particularly impactful is the apprentices don't just learn on the job, they are trained deliberately. They receive structured mentoring, high quality professional development and have clear experiences about what excellent practice looks like. We find it imperative to work with LMP Education in terms of strategy, recruitment and staff development to ensure the best possible programmes.
I wanted to do an apprenticeship programme because it allows me to gain a lot more experience whilst learning on the job, and it's just the little things that they remember that makes me think, oh, I'm actually making a difference.
I started working here and completed my level 3 early years educator with LMP. I then continued to work here, building up my knowledge and working out what my next steps are. I just think it's what I'm meant to do.
For the school, the impact has been significant. Apprentices strengthen our workforce, they strengthen classroom support, improve consistency in routines and relationships, and bring fresh energy and commitment to our teams. For apprentices themselves, this is a genuine career pathway, earning, learning and contributing to something meaningful from day one.
When I'm working closely with children, it can be very rewarding and also allows me to learn a lot more.
The most important skill I learned was communication, communicating with the kids and how to communicate with other people.
I've learnt loads of new social skills, able to communicate with colleagues more confidently and love coming to work every day.
I think my next step in my career after this programme will be to use the skills that I've learnt from my TA Level 3 apprenticeship to take it with me and go through the teaching route so that I can further develop my skills.
By utilising our apprenticeship levy and with the expert support from LMP Education, here at Greater Manchester Academies Trust, we can benefit from a cost-effective and strategic approach to staff development and upskilling our teams.
Through the power of apprenticeships, I want to grow and develop my career with LMP education.
Right, now over to Lee and Elliot. So wanted to kind of bring you in and create a discussion here around, at the moment, your current state of play. How are apprenticeships currently used within your trust? Are they focused on upskilling, recruitment, both? And what's the autonomy like? Is it centrally led practice? Is it all kind of run from the trust, or is there more autonomy amongst head teachers? Because there's no real right or wrong answer with that, but it's just really good to kind of understand where you guys are at the moment. So I'll pass to you firstly.
Hi, thank you. It's really good to be here. It's no secret, I've become a little bit of an apprenticeship geek, and I wasn't until about a year and a half ago, when I was asked to lead on apprenticeships across the trust. So we've been, as a trust, dipping our toe into apprenticeships over the last 3 years, but it's really only over the last 1 year that we've had a huge push and a more strategic approach to it. So previously we've been engaging with apprenticeships, but on a school by school basis, and head teachers would essentially, if somebody was interested in apprenticeship, they would come to their head and have a conversation with about it. But we weren't historically going out to share wide information about apprenticeships. So my role, leading professional development across the trust, and we're a trust of 20 primary schools, just to give a little bit of context, is to coordinate that strategic approach to apprenticeships and also to share the knowledge about apprenticeships, because I think there's a lot of demystifying that needs to go on. And head teachers and senior leaders in schools are so busy that actually having somebody who's got the kind of oversight of what the mechanisms of apprenticeships look like, what needs to happen, helps to overcome some of the perceived barriers. So what we're currently doing, we've had a real key focus. I work with the education team. I work really closely with our HR team, and we've looked at what are our needs over the next 3 to 5 years as a trust. And we've identified that actually recruiting teachers is our biggest challenge. We have really good retention across the trust, so that isn't so much of a focus for us. But we all know that it's becoming harder and harder to actually employ teachers. So we've looked at routes into teaching, such as the postgraduate teacher apprenticeship, and we've advertised this across the trust, and I've run seminars with head teachers so that we can really understand what that looks like and feels like, and how that can benefit schools, and what the commitment is, needing a mentor, needing off the job training, which I'm sure we'll come to in later discussions. And we've now every year got a cohort of postgraduate teacher apprenticeships coming through. And we're now developing that to explore moving TAs across different schools across the trust if the postgraduate teacher apprenticeship can't be offered in that role, and also recruiting into postgraduate teacher apprenticeships. That's one of our next steps. Alongside that, we're looking at that pipeline that you were talking about, Martha, where actually we want to upskill TAs and develop really high quality teaching assistants. So we've got some TAs doing level 3 moving into level 5, and some of those level 5 becoming teachers, and not a big push to have to move up. If you want to stay a TA, we really promote the breadth of knowledge that apprenticeships can give, but that's been really helpful for us in meeting that recruitment need. And we've now widened, so we've now got apprenticeships in HR as part of our central trust team. We've got finance leads in schools engaging with apprenticeships. We've got operation managers who are working across different teams. So it's really opened up. But I think kind of having somebody to be able to find out about the needs and then look at who are the best providers, and then creating strong relationships with apprenticeship providers who can really help navigate, that's made a huge difference to us.
I know, yeah, definitely. It's amazing to hear kind of that breadth. And it does take a while, obviously, it isn't just overnight to go, oh, it's a good idea, we've got the money there, let's use it. You really have to get that buy-in. And so it's important to have relationships like with ourselves, and then for you as that central piece to kind of bring it all together. So Elliot, kind of handing over to you, what are you guys doing?
Hi, thank you for having me. I mean, we're a lot similar, smaller, should I say, in terms of here at GMAT, Greater Manchester Academies Trust, as opposed to Nexus. We are currently a school of just two, one primary, one secondary. And in terms of how we're using apprenticeships, actually, we've really seen across our trust, seen apprenticeships as a deliberate workforce development lever in terms of not just seeing it as an entry level route into a job, in terms of going to those two strands. Absolutely, recruitment savings. We do save a little bit of money in terms of budgets, etc. But actually, we're really using apprenticeships and the power and possibility of apprenticeships for key areas such as teaching assistants, early years practitioners, business and operations, leadership pathways. And at school level, so here based at the primary, we're really thinking about how we can start people off in their career in terms of career progression, so entry into the progress into the sector in terms of whether that's at level 2, level 3. Some of our teaching assistants are sitting on level 5 and training with that qualification. But essentially, it's making sure that we're professionalizing those roles, aligning
Yeah.
them to the job practice and what we've got here, mapped directly to school improvement.
Mm.
And so essentially, we kind of have a bit of a hybrid model in the sense of Central Trust leadership. So myself and the leadership team, we sort of set that real strategic intent in terms of what we want from our apprenticeships and managing the levy and oversighting that provider relationship. So that really strong relationship we have with LMP and quality assurance of sort of the quality of those programs, etc. But then at suppose at school level, we do have our own autonomy in the sense of at primary, we have teaching assistant apprentices. We've got those who are at level 3, level 4, level 5, but we've also now seen some of our staff entering into those leadership pathways in terms of the new professional coaching program that's going to be is sort of beginning, which is really exciting. Whereas over at the secondary school, we've got more HR admin roles. So in terms of how it looks within our trust, we've got a real clear insight in terms of how we want to use apprentices, in terms of how it supports our workforce. We're really sort of thinking about providing high quality professional development, but in terms of school priorities and needs, they get to choose sort of who they employ, what types of roles, etc., sit in that staffing structure.
Yeah, and I think that's really important to get that buy-in, because you don't want to do something at trust level and say we mandate this, but actually not have the buy-in from the people on the ground, because it will turn either whoever's doing it off, or it might not work that way. So I think that's really good, that hybrid approach that you both have to getting the buy-in, getting the engagement, and then making them successful. Because I think you really do see a difference when everyone's bought into it, rather than just a top level down, or sporadically having an apprentice here, there, and everywhere across the trust with no real alignment. So it is that hybrid piece that works well. So if we just move on to kind of talking about barriers. So let's have an honest conversation. It's not overnight that it's going to kind of fall into your lap and all the head teachers are going to say, yes, this is what we want, because there is funding complexity, there is off the job training concerns, the impact on the classroom, the misconceptions we've spoke about. So maybe I'll start with you here, Elliot. Like, how did you encounter any of them kind of topics, or pushbacks, and how did you try to overcome that?
Yeah, and I think sort of a common misconception around apprenticeships, or even reluctance to employ apprentices, sometimes does fall into I would say, actually some of the lots of the additional training that apprentices might need. But actually, we see it as actually it's about setting people up that we want to get the best in our sector, in education, and we want to provide them with the best possible opportunity to succeed. So we do have quite a high level of our teaching assistants who are apprenticeship grade, but we know that actually in a current education climate where recruitment retention is quite low, actually we can provide them with the opportunity of that on the job learning through apprenticeships where they can learn and gain lots of practice in terms of school life, you know, the qualities of a teaching assistant, but also gain a qualification at the end of that. And we've done a lot of work around actually what that strategy looks like in terms of the professional development. So it is a lot of one-to-one support through coaching and mentoring, but also we've provided a lot of support and training around those soft skills, because actually as an apprentice it is about being able to, yeah, you might be in a specific role, but actually the skills that you are learning as an apprentice should essentially set you up for that world of work and that career. We do see some of us apprentices get their qualification and they go on to something else. But the key within that actually is providing them with the skills, the knowledge, the behaviours to be successful in any workforce. And I think that's the real key with apprenticeships. So we spend a lot of our time actually focusing in on those soft skills. And it's essentially what I like to call the skills that nobody ever teaches you or trains you on. You just sort of learn and grow and develop over time. But actually it's that real explicit and deliberate training to set our apprentices up to really succeed.
Amazing. Yeah, and that's so true. I think even myself coming into the world of work, there's so many like nuances and you know, formalities that you're not told and you're just expected to know, and it's all a bit of a shock. So I think that's really important to nail down to kind of make sure we have good outcomes there. And so Lee, for you and Nexus, when you obviously over the last 18 months, and I'm sure a bit longer, what were the barriers that you faced and how did you try to overcome them?
Yeah, I think there's lots of potential barriers and there's lots of areas that we've tackled, and there's still little bumps in the road that we need to work through as an organisation. So I think it's important to say that as well. I think the key barrier at the beginning when we were really trying to develop a much wider approach to apprenticeships was the knowledge within schools of actually what is on offer in terms of apprenticeships and what that looks like in practice. So for us, key is having a forum to share updates and knowledge with head teachers and leadership teams about what is available to support their staff and what that looks like. Sometimes there's misconceptions about apprenticeships being focused on younger people, and there could be a bit of we needed to have a bit of a mindset shift about actually apprenticeships are there to develop everybody at all levels. You know, and one of our most senior HR leads has got her really senior qualification for an apprenticeship. So we share those kind of stories so that people can see, oh, actually, why not me? Maybe it could be me that could do this apprenticeship. Sometimes there's a mindset with staff about going back into training if they haven't trained for a long time. So we give lots of examples about what this looks like and the support on offer that Elliot was just talking about, mentoring, coaching, having somebody in school, having somebody with the provider such as yourselves to reach out to at any point, and that can reassure. But also there's a bit of a misconception about the off the job training, that 20% timetable off the job. And sometimes people think, well, that means it has to be a day out of school and I cannot release somebody, especially when you're talking about class-based practitioners, teachers, EYFS leads, EYFS practitioners, actually giving guidance and reassurance to leadership teams about what that could look like. So yes, there will be some time when those apprentices are engaged in training and development, but there's a lot of flexibility around that. So there's, you know, with LMP, there's live sessions, but they're spread out, so you can build them into timetables. And yes, we release that they can attend them, but actually some of that study can be fitted around a weekly timetable. And off the job training could be attending staff training and development, could be having conversation with peers, could be job shadowing, could be actually having a focus in the classroom that's linked to whatever the knowledge, skills and behaviours are that they've been learning about. So I think demystifying and offering a more flexible approach to what that off the job can look like has made a big difference. And it's still something we're working on, you know, because we all know that actually release is a challenge in schools. So, and there does have to be some release, of course there does, but managing that together and sharing ideas has been really helpful. And working with other trusts and members of the team in the provider to share ideas for that is really helpful because we're all learning all the time.
Yeah, I think that's so true. I think particularly everyone's home, that it's just like, oh, a whole day out, and it isn't like that anymore. And it's just kind of winding back and going, actually, how much of it can be done within the normal parameters of a day, and getting that buy-in. And also then it's that double-edged sword, like, yes, there will be a little bit of an impact, there will be some time out the classroom, but what's the benefit in the long term? What's the benefit of the student outcome? And making sure that you have to balance that and find the right balance for you as a trust. So you don't want every single one of your TAs going out, because that would cause a huge resource issue. But actually, we need to start developing that group of educators, and how do we do it? So I think it's having them strategic conversations with people like ourselves. Again, it's really great to kind of have that trust to trust interaction of how it's worked. So just on that point, if you had one bit of advice to give trusts that are just starting out with their apprenticeship journey, what would it be?
Do you want to take that, Elliot? Should I take that?
Oh yeah, whoever.
Elliot's got a good thinking face there, I can see.
Yeah, I think it's really thinking about sort of what do you, from a trust perspective, what are you wanting from your workforce? What are you wanting from your people? In terms of who do you want to sort of achieve your goals, all of our trust skills. We've all got mission statements, visions, values, all of that. But who are you going to choose, and how are you going to make that vision a reality, essentially? And I think it's really thinking about how you can essentially come up with a workforce who can progress. It's in that investment in people, in terms of sort of providing people with different opportunities, progression, that workforce planning, which can essentially then make your goals and your vision and your values, etc., become that reality.
Amazing, thank you. And Lee, do you have a bit of advice?
Yeah, I think that's great advice. And I would add, we started small. So we started with one apprenticeship pathway. We thought, what's our immediate need and what's going to really sustain us over the next few years? And that was, for us, it was the PGTA. We've obviously now grown it. And find out actually what kind of pathway do you want? Do you want purely online? Do you want your apprentices to attend some face-to-face, and then find out what providers there are, have conversations such as LMP, who also have other apprenticeship organisations that they work with under SCG, so they can signpost you a bit. So I would say start small, maybe start with one apprenticeship pathway, but something that I think I didn't think about so early on, and it's very much on my mind now, is how you're offering an equitable opportunity for people to enter apprenticeships. Because if there's a model where those who put themselves forward are the ones who you're offering those roles to, there's a danger that we're missing some really fantastic staff development opportunities for those who maybe haven't thought about themselves in that role, or are a bit reluctant because they haven't studied for a while. So I'd think about how you can share that information with all staff that might be open to, and offer opportunities for them to find out a bit more informally, and kind of guide them and reassure, so that you've got equity of offer across your trust and we're not missing out on some really valuable members of staff. Because something that I really believe passionately about is that apprenticeships offer that training and development, and it's at no cost to a member of staff. So we can train teachers, we can train TAs. They're not having to fund their own training, and they maybe don't realise that. Sometimes they're amazed when I say, well, it's not going to cost me anything. So actually demystifying an equity of opportunity is something that I think are really important, and that you can do some of it part-time. So actually it's not just your full-time staff that can engage. So again, that equitable, inclusive offer of professional development, something to have in mind.
Yeah, definitely. And yeah, so many times people have said, oh, how much is this going to cost me? And I'm like, absolutely nothing. It's the whole point. And I think it does really enable people that can't step back and go to university to have that debt and to have that time away from work. And it's such an amazing tool that we need to shout about. So again, how we make that happen is creating like webinars or drop-in sessions with your staff when we've got stuff on, so they can just come and quietly ask us a question, or making sure they know who they can reach out to. So yeah, that's super important. Thank you so much, guys. If there's anything throughout the rest of the presentation you want to jump in and support me on, or I'll have a conversation about, feel free. But I'm going to move on to the upcoming levy changes. I think that was really valuable insight from both of you, and it's great to see kind of the similarities and differences in embedding apprenticeships and the barriers and challenges you faced, which are real, and we need to kind of keep working through and having them conversations across trust leadership. So just wanted to kind of talk about the upcoming levy changes, and they're happening at 3 different points in time, so I'll speak to them in that order. So already that's in place, and it's a positive change for mid to small size employers, is anyone that's under 25 and that joins an apprenticeship, the training's now 100% funded, whereas previously you had that 5% of co-investment. So for the smaller schools and trusts where you're not paying into the levy, that removes that financial barrier, which is great. From last month, there was a significant change around the level 7 apprenticeship. So new starters aged 22 and over will no longer be funded through level 7, the typically master's level programme. So it's important to say anyone that had started previously, their funding remains the same, but it's just kind of a thinking point for trusts. So they'll need to think about alternative routes for that senior leadership development that happens there. And then April 26 is where the biggest structural changes to the levy are coming into play. So firstly, levy funds will now expire after 12 months instead of 24. And that means trusts will lose funds twice as fast if they're not actively planning that spend. Secondly, once the levy funds are used up, the co-investment rate increases to 25%. That's up from 5%. So, you know, it's still very optimal way of funding training, but that's a slightly higher investment if you've completely utilised all your levy funds. Thirdly, the 10% government top-up is removed. So the only money that will be going into your levy pot is the value you paid in yourselves. There won't be the 10% top-up. And finally, and I think the most excitingly, is that the apprenticeship levy becomes the growth and skills levy. And this is where there's some real opportunity. So this kind of reform is allowing for shorter modular apprenticeship units, foundation apprenticeships, and more flexible training offering. So from April 2026, it means that trusts can address specific skills gaps over shorter periods of time frame, so you don't have to commit to that full apprenticeship. So I know one coming out is in AI, which is an important area for all schools to upskill themselves in. So there's kind of short modules coming out around that. And I think the key message here, like that's happening out of all of these changes, is the system is becoming more flexible, but also less forgiving. So planning, tracking, and having a clear strategy becomes absolutely essential at this point. We want to make sure that everyone's ready for it and understands the changes. So again, if you've got any questions around that, please feel free to reach out. So I think kind of when coming to think about apprenticeships and your strategy, the starting point is clarity. And I think some of the things that Elliot and Lee have touched on is really true. So where are your skills gap? Are they trust wide? Are they school focused? And also kind of that understand of the need versus want. So again, like Lee said, what is it the people that put their hands up that want them opportunities, but actually what is the need? So we need to kind of really look at the alignment and make sure that when we're aligning organisational need and that staff aspiration, and then communicate them opportunities really clearly, that's when you can use apprenticeships as a real strategic tool rather than just a reactive one. So I think at this stage, it's kind of doing that want versus need, and that's something we can help you do with skills gaps analysis and levy auditing tools, and kind of being able to support you to cascade the message of apprenticeships around your organisation. So I think we've heard really clearly from trust leaders today, and I've heard in other roundtables and conversations I've had, that the challenge isn't lack of ambition. Everyone's really up for it. Everyone really wants it. It's sometimes the complexity and the knowledge that not everyone amongst the organisation has. There's different providers, different rules, different programmes, different funding timelines. And this is where we can help, LMP can help you, along with our partner businesses across Supporting Education Group. So we're offering a managed service that brings together all apprenticeships and skills from across the Supporting Education Group, specialist training providers. So that's Best Practice Network, Eden, LMP and Thrive. So we've got 4 amazing apprenticeship providers. And rather than navigating them multiple relationships, you can kind of have a single point of contact, coordinated approach to workforce planning, clear visibility of what funding you have and how best to use it. And we want to be able to support trusts with their levy planning and forecasting, making sure the programme selection is aligned to what their needs and priorities are. We can have clear oversight of enrolment, compliance and monitoring, and ongoing account management. So I think as we're moving into a world where levy funds expire faster, cost more once exhausted, and need to be used strategically, having that managed service removes risks and the administrative burden, we hope. And ultimately, it allows trust to focus on what really matters, which is developing your people without having to become funding experts. So this slide hopefully just shows you kind of the breadth of programmes that we can cover. So we've grouped them together in teaching, teaching support, teaching assistance, the leadership roles and central services. So just kind of have a look at all of the different options we have across the group here at Supporting Education Group, and how you can kind of pick and choose to make that trust-wide strategy. So you know that you might have some of these areas covered in your CPD strategy already, which is great. But if there are some bits we can support you with, we want to really sit down and kind of flesh that out to have that understanding. So kind of the takeaways we'd like to leave you today is this. So your apprenticeship levy is effectively your CPD budget. You really need to get that stakeholder buy-in across the trust, the finance, the HR, the leadership, and all of the schools. And now, particularly ahead of all the changes coming up, it's time to embed apprenticeship into your whole workforce strategy. So that's kind of the main body of the webinar from me. If anyone has any questions for myself, Lee, or Elliot in the chat, it'd be great to hear from you guys. So I'm seeing any. No, we've got no Q&A. I don't know, Elliot or Lee, is there any kind of final notes you'd like to sign off with? I know you've already given your bits of advice, but
just to say, you know, information is really key. So just spend a little bit of time exploring and having conversations. And I ask questions about apprenticeships. I mean, so many times across the week, I'm in contact with different people about apprenticeships because you can't know everything, and it's massive and it can be overwhelming. But actually, it's such an exciting opportunity to grow the staff you've got or recruit into roles. So just take some time to find out and have conversations.
Yeah, sure. So yeah, just as we're wrapping up, we've still got one more. National Apprenticeship Week's not over, guys. We've still got one more webinar that we're hosting tomorrow on how to use your apprenticeship levy and reduce recruitment costs. So if you are looking to kind of make the most of your levy or really start recruiting apprentices, that'd be great for you. We also have our inaugural apprenticeship awards this afternoon. I'm super excited. We've got some amazing nominees, and I actually was on the kind of panel to decide, and it was really hard. There were so many amazing stories. So I'm sure some of you on the call might have some of your staff in the nominees. So if you want to join, feel free to join. But finally, from me, a massive thank you to Lee and Elliot. Thank you so much. I really enjoyed that chat. And thank you everyone who joined today. If you'd like to create a tailored workforce plan for your trust, just scan the QR code and we can book in a chat with myself or the team. We'd love to support any development that you can. And like Lee said, we can set you up with conversations with people across different trusts to see how you've got on, but reach out and let's have a conversation. And thank you everyone for joining.